2022 was an exciting year in spaceflight with record after record being broken. So can 2023 be even as exciting? Well, with things like Vulcan and Starship and Dream Chaser, it most certainly could. But how do you pick the top 10? Well, that's a little hard for one person to do, so we asked our NASA Spaceflight Discord community to tell us the top 10 things they are most excited about in spaceflight for 2023. But before we get to that top 10 list, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this video, shop.nasaspaceflight.com, which, wait a minute, we're sponsoring ourselves? But yes, we actually are, and there's more to that coming because we have some great ways that you can stay involved and keep up to date with all of the things that you find exciting with spaceflight in 2023. But without further ado, here is the list. Number 10, the Artemis II crew announcement. During the early part of 2023, NASA is expected to announce the names of the 4 astronauts who will fly on the Artemis II mission around the moon and back. While those names aren't known yet, one thing we do know is that a Canadian will be on board the flight. This will be a milestone mission for NASA, and even though Artemis II won't land on the moon but only do a lunar flyby, it will still represent the first time in over 50 years that humans have returned to our closest celestial neighbor. Right now, Artemis II is planned to begin stacking operations in the iconic vehicle assembly building right here behind me in 2023 for a launch no earlier than 2024.
It is the beginning of the new beginning, and that is to explore the heavens.
Number 9, the debut flight of Ariane 6, Europe's new heavy lift launcher. Ariane 6 is set to replace the workhorse Ariane 5 rocket of the European Space Agency's launch family. Overall, Ariane 6 comes in at a lower price tag than Ariane 5 and even shares some commonalities with the Vega C rocket. Right now, Ariane 6 is set to take its first flight in Q4 of 2023, but don't be surprised if that ends up slipping to Q1 of 2024. Number 8, commercial science missions. 2023 should be the year the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or CLPS, really ramps up. These missions are contracted by NASA as ways to help return humans to the surface of the moon, something that is currently planned for the Artemis III mission. Of course, Rocket Lab's Venus mission will also be the first time a private company has launched its own interplanetary mission. And didn't I say this was going to be an exciting year? The first flight is in partnership with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and will include a small probe that will descend into the Venusian atmosphere and relay data about its composition. Liftoff is currently set for May, the next Earth-Venus transfer window. If Rocket Lab should miss that May transfer window, they'd unfortunately have to wait until 2025 when Earth and Venus realign for the mission's priorities. Number 7, a big yet small category. Smallsat launchers. For this category, Relativity's Terran 1 and ABL Space's RS-1 rocket are the top picks from the NASA spaceflight community. Both of these launchers are set to make their debut flights in 2023 if all goes well. Terran 1 even has a shot at being the first methane-powered rocket to reach orbit. In fact, we have an entire video about that on our YouTube channel, so don't forget to check it out. At the same time that Terran 1 is gearing up for its first flight, RS-1 is also doing the same, but this time from Alaska instead of Florida. ABL has attempted the launch multiple times since September, but stood down for the year in mid-December. They plan to try again in the first few weeks of 2023, and we wish them and the team the absolute best of luck. RS-1, much like the Falcon 9, is powered by 9 E2 engines on the first stage and a single vacuum-optimized engine on the second stage. With ground support systems built to fit into standard shipping containers, the RS-1 rocket is able to launch from anywhere that has a 150 by 50-foot concrete pad, allowing for rapid launches from different launch sites. Interestingly, the RS-1 rocket is able to use Type A kerosene, a version or variant of kerosene more commonly used in aircraft rather than rockets. At number 6, the first flight of Dream Chaser will see a new entry into the world of International Space Station cargo resupply craft. While Dream Chaser has been delayed for several years, much to the chagrin of space shuttle fans, its schedule is sadly still up in the air or currently on the ground. Dream Chaser's first flight is currently scheduled for the Q3 of 2023 on board a Vulcan Centaur rocket. More on that rocket in a moment. After that debut flight, Dream Chaser is scheduled to go on to perform 5 contracted cargo resupply missions to the International Space Station through to the end of the decade. After its service with the International Space Station, Dream Chaser has been proposed as a servicing craft for Blue Origin's planned Orbital Reef space station. Number 5. The first crewed flight of Starliner. Not only is the crewed flight of Starliner contracted to fly to the ISS, but much like Dream Chaser, it has been delayed for many years, but for various reasons. Boeing actually had to redo the initial orbital flight test after significant and severe software issues led to the early termination of that mission and the almost loss of the Starliner capsule itself. Thankfully, the second mission, OFT-2, was a resounding success, clearing the way for the first crewed test flight. On this mission, NASA astronauts Barry Wilmore and Sonny Williams will fly Starliner to the ISS for a short stay. This will be the first crewed launch on an Atlas V rocket and the first crewed launch from Slick 41 on the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The crew flight test is currently set to launch no earlier than April 2023, and if all goes well on that mission, it would pave the way for Starliner to begin regular crew transportation services to and from the International Space Station. Number 4. OSIRIS-REx sample return. Now, this is one that hasn't gotten a lot of coverage recently, but it's one that has the NSF community really excited. Launched on September 8, 2016 by a ULA Atlas V rocket, the OSIRIS-REx mission is NASA's first to sample an asteroid, and it departed Bennu in May of 2021 for its return trip to Earth. The capsule is scheduled to land in Utah in the United States on September 24th, returning 60 grams of asteroid Bennu's surface for scientists to examine and study. The main spacecraft, however, will fly past its home planet and begin an extended mission called OSIRIS-APEX. This extended mission will see OSIRIS travel to the near-Earth asteroid Apophis for an arrival in 2029.
So Bennu probably was, at least the parent asteroid that Bennu came from, was comet-like at some point in its early history, and that it was a combination of rocky, metallic, icy, and organic material.
Now, before we reveal the top 3 most exciting things we're looking forward to in spaceflight in 2023, I'm going to pass it over to my buddy Sawyer for a look at some of those things that didn't actually make the top 10.
Thanks, Chris. In our recent poll, we added a free response section for anything else that members were interested in seeing in 2023, and there were definitely a few that came up over and over again. First, something we will likely be looking forward to every year for the foreseeable future, as we, well, look into the past. And that's new images and discoveries from the James Webb Space Telescope. One high-interest target was the TRAPPIST-1 system, a star system with several Earth-like exoplanets 40 light-years from home, which Webb has been studying over the past month. Results from this study should be public sometime this year. Another common name? Rocket Lab. The company is hopeful this year they will successfully catch the first stage of their Electron rocket out of midair using a helicopter, making refurbishment and reuse easier than if it landed in the ocean. Also mentioned was development progress of their medium-class Neutron rocket, which will compete with the likes of Falcon 9, Terran R, and Antares. Finally, the other common name was New Glenn. While its maiden flight is not happening this year, it will be great to see prototype testing and engine firings continue, which, to stay up to date on New Glenn's progress at Cape Canaveral, be sure to subscribe and look out for our Kennedy Space Center flyover videos, which I have on good authority. There's a new one coming out in just a couple weeks. Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Sawyer. And now, the reveal of the top 3 most exciting things we're looking forward to in spaceflight in 2023. And this is big, so can I get a drum roll, please? Perfect. Number 3. A historic flight rate for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. Elon Musk has long been saying that he hopes SpaceX will perform at least 100 flights in the new year across all of their vehicles. And crucially, these won't just be routine Starlink flights. No. We will also have major missions like Polaris Dawn, featuring the first private spacewalk in human spaceflight history. Falcon Heavy is also set to have a very busy year with 5 flights currently manifested for that rocket, including the all-important interplanetary mission called Psyche, which was actually delayed from 2022. And of course, we can't forget reuse milestones. Falcon boosters will continue to break their own reflight records. Currently, no booster has flown more than 15 times, so how far will a booster eventually go in 2023? 18 flights? 20? Maybe even more? Give us your best guess in the comments down below. Oh, and while you're down there, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel and help us break that YouTube algorithm, because we're really close to breaking that YouTube algorithm. Number 2, Vulcan Centaur. Originally set to fly in 2019, United Launch Alliance's newest rocket, the Vulcan, is set for its first flight in Q1 of 2023. On board this flight will be Astrobotic's first Peregrine lander, carrying over a dozen payloads as part of the CLPS program. If all goes well, Peregrine will land on the surface of the moon later in 2023. Also on board Vulcan for its first flight will be 2 prototype Kuiper satellites. Kuiper is an upcoming internet satellite constellation from Amazon that hopes to rival Starlink. The billionaires are continuing to fight it out up there in space. Now, before we reveal the number 1 most exciting thing we're looking forward to in 2023, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor for today's video, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. 2023 will be an exciting year in spaceflight. To help you keep track of all of these events as well as everything happening in your day-to-day life, hop on over to our shop and grab one of our calendars. These beautiful calendars feature 12 images by your favorite NASA spaceflight contributors. We even have 2 separate versions of the calendar available, one with Starship and one for general spaceflight. Relive the best moments of 2022 in 2023 by picking one up today for $40 or grab both for just $60. And if you're like me, you'll need both, one for the office and one for the kitchen. Shipping is free, and your purchase helps NASA spaceflight continue its ongoing 24/7 coverage of everything that you love. So jump on over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com to pick up your calendars today, and also make sure to check out our other merch where you can celebrate other events in human spaceflight, like human spaceflight. And now, the number 1 most exciting thing we're ready for in spaceflight in 2023. Can I get another drum roll, please? Perfect. Number 1, Starship's first orbital flight. With original aspirations hoping for a liftoff in July 2021, the orbital test flight of Starship will, as you can probably guess, be the first flight attempt of a full Starship stack all the way to orbit. The flight vehicle is currently expected to consist of Booster 7 and Ship 24, both of which are still in the midst of their pre-flight test campaigns. And should anything go wrong, don't worry, because Booster 9 and Ship 25 are not too far behind and can easily be swapped in if needed. Ship 24 was expected to launch the first full-size Starlink V2 satellites into orbit on the first orbital flight, but this idea seems to have been shelved as its payload dispenser has been welded shut, a pretty good indication they don't plan to deploy anything from it. Now, this will definitely be an ambitious flight. No Starship vehicle has ever flown higher than 12.5 kilometers, and no Super Heavy booster has ever left the ground under its own power. In fact, no booster has even fired all 33 of its Raptor engines yet. And aside from the booster, there are many non-flight tested systems in play here as well, like the stage separation system, Raptor vacuum engines, and heat shields, just to name a few. And one thing we're pretty certain people are going to be wanting to do during the first orbital flight is count how many tiles actually come off of Starship while it launches. And don't worry, we'll be able to do that for you, and you'll also be able to count the tiles that are lying on the ground after launch via our Starbase Live, a 24/7 operated YouTube stream showing you all there is to see in and around Starbase, Texas. But crucially, as we already said, the next vehicles in line are not that far behind. Ship 25 is essentially a copy of Ship 24, while Booster 9 sports several upgrades over Booster 7. So if something goes wrong on the first attempt and the ground support equipment isn't too badly damaged, the second attempt might not take that long to get ready from a vehicle standpoint. This year will also be an exciting one for Starship in general, even beyond its first orbital test flight. After Ship 24 and 25 come Ships 26 and 27, both of which lack heat shields and flaps. The exact purpose of these strangely expendable ships isn't certain, but it may just be to give some of the test flights a lower price tag. Also, remember, renderings that we have seen of the lunar variant of Starship for the Artemis program also do not have flaps, so it could potentially be a correlation to the Artemis program for NASA.
Their plan is to do an uncrewed landing in 23 and then to do the crewed landing in late 24.
Now, while SpaceX definitely doesn't plan to fly anything to orbit on Starships for its first few flights, that doesn't mean payloads won't fly on the new system this year. In fact, there's a very good chance that we will see Starlink version 2 satellites flying on Starship this year, though Paying payload customers probably will wait until 2024 or beyond, as SpaceX proves that the system can do what they claim it can. So there you have it, the top 10 most exciting things the NASA spaceflight community is looking forward to in 2023. But I'm sure some of you are out there going, how could you not mention this one thing? Well, if you're looking forward to something that we didn't mention, please let us know down in the comments below. As always, from the NASA spaceflight community, we wish you and your loved ones a safe, happy, and prosperous new year. I'm Chris Gebhardt for NASA Spaceflight. Later, nerds.